All right, so we just got done cutting this. Turned out pretty good. We're gonna hit it with a sander, get those rough edges cleaned up, get all the paint off, get ready to do some welding. I wanted to show you guys something else. So our fuel tank, we're doing our leak test. So all we did was we propped it up. We got the plugs in this end to seal it. And then up here, I didn't actually have the plugs and I really wanted to test it. So some of you guys are probably use this stuff, Gorilla Tape. Well, it's kind of waterproof. It's awesome. So I just taped this damn hole shut. But the way I taped it, I can still get in there and actually see the welds. And then here's our water level. Yeah, you can probably see. It's right there on the surface. It's kind of reflective. Yeah, there you go. So we got the sucker chock full of water. And we looked all over it. I found one single leak. Let me show you where it is because it's kind of funny. I've got an arrow pointing at it. Get a zoom in. There it is. I've wiped that off several times. It comes back after, you know, half an hour or something. So let's talk about this. This is interesting. Look at the weld here. And look at where it's leaking. See how the weld's like piled up on top of the metal? If we look at it like this, you can see it's just like standing up on top of the metal. If we come over here, you can see the welds are more melted in. I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. So this is actually where I started welding. This is literally, I started welding. I welded maybe a half of an inch and I got a leak. And then all the welds for the rest of the tank from that point forward don't appear to leak. But let me show you the difference. So if we're right here, here's my thumb. You can see how tiny that weld is. Let's come over here a little bit further down, like you know, that much further away, and look at the difference. These are much bigger welds. So what happened is when I started here, is I was trying to, I was afraid of burning a hole in it. So I was being more careful. Yeah, here's a good view. Look at the left to right difference. Which one of these welds looks better? Well, regardless of which one looks better, the one on the right doesn't leak. And the big reason is these were little bitty welds. There's not much heat and the metal's like piling up on top of the metal. And right there, it never melted in, so it's leaking. You come over here, these are big fat welds and they're laying flat with the metal. If I get the camera, maybe this will kind of show up. Yeah, they're kind of like laying in there. Whereas over here, these welds are poking way up. Yeah, that's a decent, it's hard to film. Maybe that kind of shows it. Yeah, you can see the ones on the left are kind of poking up. The ones on the right are kind of laid down. These melted. I put more heat and it melted and laid that metal in and really bonded this piece of metal to that piece of metal. And even the metal I added was just melting in. And that's what you want. So pretty welds are awesome, but this is a fuel cell. So pretty aside, they need to be mechanically strong. In case I get in a wreck, I don't want this to just like tear and break. And of course they need to not leak. So like, for example, a fusion weld, a common thing to do, I've seen this done, is to use a fusion weld. I hate those. I don't think they're very strong. They don't leak. Fusion welds are clean, they look beautiful, and they typically don't leak if they're done right, but they're not very strong. These are way stronger. Now, not this one. Obviously, I got a leak here. We'll fix that. But so far, that's the only leak I found, which is frankly amazing. This is the first... I've worked on stuff like this. I've never actually built a fuel cell from scratch all by myself. I've helped on one. So considering this is the first one I did, I'm pretty happy with that. And I saw this spot. I kind of knew. I was like, yeah, that wasn't my best weld. I even considered grinding this off and redoing it. But I knew I'd leak test it, so I left it. Anyway, enough rambling on that. Looks like the fuel cell's got one single pinhole. And other than that, we are good to go. The rest of this you can see here. That's what we're talking about. Big wells that just burn in and melt. And they don't leak. And they're mechanically strong. So that's all good. And now let's jump back to getting our water pump built up. Alright, so I wanted to film this. We just welded the first one on. And this actually looks great. I'm pretty happy with this. But it did not look like this earlier. It looked horrible. If you can see all this metal here, I kept basically weld, grind. It was not working. Couldn't figure out why. I was doing something stupid. I should have known better. So this is a big part, requires a big fat weld bead. And you know what that means? It means you can't use a little bitch ass cup. You gotta have a man-sized one. So I had to break this guy out. Now I don't use this one often, but I knew this was the problem and I was ignoring it. So look at my tungsten. It looks okay. when I was doing this earlier with that little bitty cup, it just kept oxidizing. Every single time I welded, it just looked like hell. And then my welds look like hell. They're like bubbling, and you know, granted this is castings. Like castings don't really weld very good, but this was welding horribly before. So I kind of backed up and I was like, okay, what's wrong? I came over to my machine. Thought I had my settings close, but I played with the frequency up and down a little bit, AC balance up and down. Basically made it worse. I already had it set correctly. Looked at my CFM. I was running basically double the cup, so I had a number 8. Now it's at about 15. So then I was like, okay, it seems like a shielding gas problem. The tungsten's oxidizing, the part's all bubbling up. There were times where I got a weld bead going, but it was when I did a smaller bead and kind of went fast. And anyway, I finally decided, I was like, you know what? I think it's a shielding gas. Let's break out the big ass one. This is like a number 16, so it's fucking gigantic. Downside is it requires 30 something CFM of argon, so it just destroys your bottle. That kind of sucks because, you know, you go through argon quickly. But guess what? Didn't even touch the machine. Didn't change anything. All I did was put this fucking cup in there and redo the tungsten, and boom, she's throwing down beads. And I'll point something out if you guys are ever wondering. See this little section here that's like weird looking? This is called etching. The machine is using the AC balance settings to tear the oxide layer off the metal. And so that's why you see this shiny thing, and then you see this little section that goes past. That's it, the cleaning action. I wasn't getting that before because I didn't have the damn argon to keep the metal clean. So anyway, as soon as I started welding with this new cup, instantly I could see that the arc was stable, it wasn't wandering. My metal still bubbled a little because it's cast, but that's kind of normal. And once you get going, she was great. So we got a nice little bead on here all the way around. This part's hot as fuck, so I'm trying not to touch it too much. Anyway, that looks solid. I know that doesn't leak. I don't even need to test it. Now we're gonna get ready and do this other one. Okay, we just got done welding, and the second one turned out really nice as well. So who knew having good welder settings matters? So real happy with this. Now we're gonna put the motor back together. We're gonna cool it off, put the motor on, get ready to put this on the car. All right, we just got the pump put together, got the motor in. Man, this thing looks great. Turned out better than I thought it would, honestly. So hell yeah, we're gonna start putting this together, figure out where it's going in the car.